Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Musician's Mentor podcast. I'm your host, Travis Mark, and today I am speaking with drum royalty, the one and only Johnny Vidacovich. Johnny is a household name here in Louisiana, and I've got to be honest, I had heard the name before I got here, but once I moved here, it was a whole different beast. Couldn't go anywhere, especially if you were talking about drums, and not hear his name come up. Besides working as an educator, Johnny has played with a massive list of names. Professor Longhair, John Scofield, John Cleary, James Singleton, the Astral Project. It goes on and on and on. And let me tell you, if you see this guy live, you're in for a real treat. He's just got some kind of natural ability that's just so organic and cool to watch that, like, it's a gift. As usual, I've put a few links in the show notes where you can sort of look up more of Johnny or even get in touch with Johnny. But for now, let me quit my blabbering. Ladies and gentlemen, the one and only, the legendary Mr. Johnny Vidacovich.
Hello, Travis.
Hey, Johnny, how's it going?
Excellent, man. How about you?
Good. How was your gig last night? Any good?
It was fun, man. We had a whole lot of fun.
Good.
It was really good.
Johnny, just so you're aware, I'm already recording, so I'm not going to waste your time. We're going to jump straight into it. As I mentioned to you on our previous phone call, I've got a couple things prepared, but basically we'll see where the conversation goes and where it goes, you know?
Lovely. That's perfect.
Cool. So what I typically do with everybody, obviously post-interview, I will record a sort of pre-intro before the interview starts, as well as a post-outro. But basically, I always ask everybody to just do a brief introduction, let our listeners know who you are, a few of the things you've done, and what you're currently up to, please.
Okay. I'm John Vidacovich, and I was born here in New Orleans, and I'm still living here. I've been playing music pretty much all my life. I'm 73 years old. And I've been playing since I'm 8 or 9, 10 years old. And I started playing gigs with a traditional music, trad music style band of kids when I was about 12, 13. My mom got me a little set of drums, and I started taking music lessons with a man named Charlie Sewer. Charlie Sewell was my first teacher. He taught me everything. And then through the decades, I played, constantly growing, from being a 12-year-old kid learning, way down yonder in New Orleans. And then before you know it, you're playing some James Brown. And before you know it, you're playing some Charlie Parker stuff. And before you know it, you're playing some more soul and some more funk. And then before, the decades just go on and on and on. So I've been fortunate enough to be well equipped as a youngster in terms of my studies with Charlie Sewer and my experiences with playing all the different kind of gigs that were handed to me to play, that I was given the opportunity to play. So I just blah blah blah, and here I am, and here we are. And also in addition to that, I did a whole lot of teaching, throughout adjunct teaching, throughout the years, here and there.
Yeah, so I mean, you yourself.
That's about it.
I'm sorry. Carry on.
Yeah, that's about it.
Well, yeah, I mean, your name is synonymous with New Orleans drumming in general. And I mean, you've got books and educational sort of content out there teaching about New Orleans type styles. But obviously, you are an all-rounder. Having gigged as long as you have, I mean, when would you say you had your first professional gig? Obviously, you started very young, but what sort of age, what sort of decade would you put that down to?
Well, what level of professional it would it be? Does professional constitute the fact that you got paid money?
Yeah, let's say your first
Then,
paying gig.
I guess I was 13, 12, 13 years old. So that would have been, I don't know, around 1961 or two.
Wow. That's amazing. So, I mean, obviously, having still been a gigging musician, I mean, we started the conversation by saying you gigged last night at the Maple Leaf. What's the biggest changes? And obviously, there's numerous. But for you personally, what are the biggest changes you've seen on the gigging scene?
Hmm. I'd say the biggest changes were probably yeah, there's two ways to look at it: organically, and then of course through time, technology, and people. I think the biggest changes were uh, 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 the music business, or what I refer to as the music racket. I think that obviously took on more power, and that directed a lot more of pop music and large people music. It directed them more into the businessman's lap. So that's unfortunate. It's the unfortunate thing there. The good thing is that a lot more musicians learned to uh, you know become grow through this advancement of knowledge between people. They figured out what not to do too. That was important to a lot of young, a lot of changes happened when a lot of young people started figuring out what not to do. That's across the board. That goes from everything from what not to play, from or in addition to what not to say,
Yeah.
and to watch your pay,
Yeah.
because by that time, young cats were getting hip to the fact that it was very common. It's a very common practice for musicians to get the wrong pay because they did not know how to negotiate more. So one of the biggest changes in the music overall business picture is the fact that young people became smarter about the rip off in the music racket. So I think that it still is a lot of racket rip off going on. Everybody loves to get their fingers in the pie when there's money involved. But in my life, because I haven't been involved in a lot of big money industry business products, I've mostly been involved in jazz players and funk players and some national touring acts. Been around the world several times with Joe Sample and Randy Crawford. So I got to see all of that too. But most of my life growing up around here, it's pretty much on it's not on a showbiz scale. It's more like on life as a musician scale. It's more down home. So
Yeah.
the biggest things I've seen is you know the the speed and uh, uh, intelligent path and the direction that young people take to learn music. That's one of the biggest things I've seen. They have so much available.
Yeah, tons available. It's actually a topic that comes up on almost every
Hmm.
interview I've done so far. Doesn't matter if I'm talking to drummers or guitarists or producers, just the influx of content and
Yeah.
education out there
Uh huh.
is crazy in comparison to even as short as maybe
Oh
15,
yeah,
20 years ago,
yeah,
how much it's
yeah,
changed, you know.
yeah.
But now you're quite renowned and known as a teacher. You teach both privately, I think, still,
Uh-huh.
right? And you've taught at a couple of universities and stuff, and obviously you've got a few sort of household name drummers that cite you as influences and have had lessons with you,
Hmm.
etc., etc., etc. What about, let's talk about changes you've seen in teaching. I mean, again, so now we've got this time in the world where so much stuff is out there. Obviously, it's hard to sift through if you don't know what you're looking for. But what sort of advances or disadvantages have you seen as a instructor now that we have all this information available
Uh-huh.
as a teacher?
Well, the, the big change, of course, is the immediate, speedy access that not only students but teachers alike have access to this speedy bunch of information, you know, and so that can work, and that can work in a good and a bad way, so nothing surprised me in teaching. I'll tell you what's funny about it is, I see again that there's two kind of teachers, or at least mostly two kinds. There's the kind that, will have a program, say, okay, if you go through these books and these exercises, and if you get to this material here, and if you get to this material here, then you have, this is what everybody does, and and I understand that. And then you have the other kind of teacher who looks at every student and says, how do I teach this kid?
Hmm.
Should I go a little bit to the left because he's more of a creative style? He's the kind of guy who rather play some up to that down, and and then sitting and he can repeat it, spit it right back out you. Or another guy, you might write it down on a piece of paper, da-da-da-da-da-da, and he might just glance at it, man, and play it perfectly because he's a right brain thinker. The right,
Yeah.
I don't know if I got my sides of the brain right, but you know what I mean. The guy, the
Yeah, I
more
know what you mean.
the more academic, or one who can see it very clearly on paper, and whereas the other guy who can do it better by hearing it, and by if he looks at it on paper, that could intimidate him or confuse him, or he's going to take a little bit longer than the other guy. Whereas the other guy is going to take a little bit longer if you just play it to him and say, play this, pick it up, da, 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 da. He might not get it right the first two or three times, but if you throw it down on a piece of paper, he got it totally right. Whereas, anyway, you know what I'm saying? So they have that kind of teacher who figures out not only that deciding factor, try to analyze your student. I don't try to do that right off the bat, whether he's right or left. I'll let that try to come seep out of him, and let him tell me through his through our time together, through the silent messages, that whether or not he's a lefty or a righty. You know what I'm saying? So okay, so you have that kind of teacher who focuses on the individual student, figures out how to teach him. You know what I'm saying? And you have the other teacher who has, okay, here's book number one, and we're going to do these 11 exercises here, and you're going to move on to everybody. You too, you Joey and Sam and Benny and Mary, all of y'all going to, this is what you got to do. Because this program's a proven program and it works. And if all drummers do it, and 90% of the drummers I know have done it, so you got to do it. So okay, that's what the way I kind of felt about teaching after I was teaching for about maybe 15, 20 years, of teaching. I figured out, man, you really got to dwell on in individual student. and bring it out. Let him bring it out of himself. You can't force it out of him, but it help. You can help him. But anyway, getting back to your question, what are some of the big differences that I've seen in teaching over the years? I've only seen that the technology can be good or bad. So here we go. What are the main differences? The main differences is the teacher can either be lazy and just get the information, because there's so many methods on your Google, on your blah blah blah, whatever. There's so much. So many more people are writing drum books, and music books, and all that. So the mute that you can do that and just throw it at the students and say, "Hey, motherfucker, learn this shit," and you're gonna be good. It's proven. Or you can sort of like say, okay, yeah, you should learn. You should, Google that on your own, because it's out there. I'm not just going to print it out for you and you do it. Google that on your own and do this. But, the teacher himself nowadays, I think, here's the difference. I think nowadays the teacher has a bigger responsibility. I think that he has to not, in addition to knowing all the standard ways to teach, and you got to know, your 16 notes, and you got to know your scales. You might try out, look at the individual students if you're teaching them on an individual basis, and say, let's go on the inside of you and find out what's on in you that makes you you. Because what's happening is there's so much information, people aren't going on the inside to stimulate their creativity. Because the creativity of so many of our of our gods and idols and great musicians is right there at your fingertips. You can just simply use that in your playing, right? Learn that, string it together, create your solos made up on them. Or you can figure out a method to go on the inside of you and be a see who you are and what you have to express about you. So I think a teacher's obligation is to teach a student or get a student to teach himself, to help him learn how to teach himself. I think that's a thing teachers need to start putting into their program. Teaching 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 the student how to teach himself, and that means going on the inside and finding out what you got to express, that makes you and not what's already on Google or on YouTube or what's been transcribed and handed to you in a book. We never had no real books when we were coming up. There was no real book.
Let's talk about that for a second. So when you were coming up, again, obviously a different time with far less access to information in terms of, like, saying, just pulling up a YouTube video. So what was your teacher's approach? And also, if I can kind of double barrel the question, what was your parents' attitude towards you sort of gravitating towards becoming a drummer? Was it positive because obviously New Orleans is known for drummers? Or was it kind of, were there doubts because of the career path a musician may take?
Well, I'll answer the second question first. As far as career path and uh, uh, doubts or no doubts, that really never, that question didn't kind of really arise into my head until I was probably 40 something years old, and realizing that here I was, a musician with a wife and a family, and what am I going to do? I guess this is my career. You know, it looked like my career picked me. Now, and going back to as a kid, I just my what made me want to play the drums was liking them, uh, having fun, and never really, I was having fun, so I really never had any I never existential questions to ask myself, about music. I was more lost in the music and taken up by the music than I was by questioning what am I doing and where am I going. It just was. The music was way too more overpowerful in my life and in my mind and brain that those existential questions didn't pop up to way later in my life, and I had already had my feet firmly planted in this cheeseburger of life of music.
I love that cheeseburger of life. That is amazing. So, Johnny, without trying to get too personal, and again, just because the whole idea with this podcast is to talk about some of the hardships and some of the real life stuff versus just, you know, gear and music theory, etc., etc., etc. So let's talk a little bit about, and I'm gonna kind of go off of your previous answer. Once you got to that point where you had a family and you realized that, okay, well, this is my career now, what was the hardest sort of reality check that you had to make at that point? I mean, music, as you know, having been a musician for as long as you have, it's not the most secure career. People who love it still seem to choose it. I'm a big believer, or was at least when I was younger, that I wasn't going to personally have a backup plan. So I too have done this ever since I can remember, without a backup plan. And sometimes as the years go by and as I'm getting older, I sometimes wonder if I should have had some kind of backup plan. That being said, I don't regret anything, and I'm sure you don't either. But what have been some of the hardships you've had to learn once you were on that path? What was the hardest part, especially, you know, once a family came into the picture and you knew
Oh,
you
the
had to
hardest
provide?
part was kicking myself in the ass repeatedly for not having a backup plan. Uh, you know, here I was. You know, you can't change horses, and way I was way you know, you can't change horses in the middle of the race. You know, and I was past the middle. So there was no change in horses. This is what I do. I play music. That's it. And I have no backup plan. And I had this family. So what I would do? Okay, at that point, I guess I try to talk myself, to get down off the rooftop. You know, just like put my head to the grindstone play. I'm a firm believer, especially in the old days. Just take every gig. The phone rings, take the gig. Whether don't think about whether you like it, dislike it, whether you like the person or dislike the person, whether the money is good or bad. If the money's decent and you can come home with two bags of groceries and a box of diapers, then go take the fucking gig. Shut up. You look at your watch. You'll be out of there in a second, even though you hate every moment of this particular gig, or going in the back door of this hotel because they don't want you to go in the front door and go, and blah blah blah. It could be anything, or it could be a beautiful gig, but a lot of time, that the shocking thing was, what did I do? I didn't have a backup plan. Should I have had a backup plan? Absolutely, I should have. Do I tell every young student that I meet, man? Let me tell you something, bro. You know, be nice to have a backup plan. If you don't have one, then you better get don't don't be telling me you like this kind of music and you like that kind of music and you don't want to, because guess what? You're gonna have to like every kind of music, because you're gonna have to get everybody to like you, to hire you, and like the way you play it with a good attitude, and then you can get through life without a backup plan, unless you hit it with the 1% of the guys who get picked up by a industry music racket band, and you can make big money and all of that, and buy a big house, and be a pop star, a rock star, or whatever. And that might work out too. You might get picked up for that shit, and which I firmly advise: grab it, motherfucker, and grab the money. And you can always, go back to this if you can avoid the temptation of all of the money. But I mean, my- you know, am I happy? I'm happy. I'm sad. I'm happy. Yeah, both. Can't stay happy all the time. You got to have your sad moments to have your happy moments. Like I was always told you got to have your lows to have your highs. You know what I mean? So I mean that's just the way works. Plus minus, plus minus, plus minus. Downbeat, upbeat, downbeat, upbeat, downbeat, upbeat.
Yeah, no, just human nature, just the way it goes. You've got to have those downs. You're 100% correct.
Mathematics, yeah.
So let's kind of shoot a little bit to the gigging scene.
Yep.
You again, you're Johnny Vidacovich. So when I first arrived in this town, I heard your name 1,000 times, and for good reason. Because when I finally did get to see you, you were playing with John Cleary's Monster Gentleman, and I was blown away. Absolutely incredible. I love everything about your playing, sir. Cannot praise you enough. But excuse me. Let's talk about what if you're a. Let's take my situation, and this is not actually for me. I'm gratefully busy enough. But if you're a new person in going into a city, let's say you've moved to one of the musical cities, Austin, LA, Nashville, Miami, or even here where you can still work as a musician, and you want to go out and try and get yourself some gigs. What advice could you give up and coming players on how to do that? Or what would your approach be if you were going to do it now, knowing what you know?
Well, I'd call the people, call the people in Nashville that in Austin that I know, and say, hey man, some of them are drummers, some of them are not, and maybe there's only a handful of people that I know in Austin well enough to call, but I know a girl and an old lady, and she works in like a Mexican uh, mariachi type band, but she knows lots of musicians, and she's always been very nice to me, and I knew her ex-husband and stuff like that. We used to work together, and I would tell all those people I'm moving there, yeah, put the word out. Put the word out, it gets there, put the word out, try to pick up students immediately, because at students has always been my ace in the hole for, getting grocery money together, shit like that, because gigs take a while sometimes. Austin is got a lot of musicians, so it would, and I know the gigs don't pay much. I already know what they pay there. They don't pay any more than they pay in New Orleans, and there's less gigs, so it wouldn't be easy. So what would I tell guys, man? Just make, get out there, call them. Once you call one or two musicians, then you're going to call one or two more. Then there are jam sessions, or there's jam sessions there, and find out where those are, and you go there, and the way I used to do it was, man, you go out to clubs is the way I used to do it. But I mean, New Orleans is a little bit more. It has a little bit more of a design where you can do that. But there's a street, there's a place, there's a district in Austin where they got stripper clubs and all of that. And I know drummers that work in and out of there. The bread ain't good, but then again, I never worked in any strip clubs where the bread was good, except one, you know. and it was with a bunch of guys that were 20 years older than me, and I was just substituting. Anyway, I mean, there's a place. I mean, you got, like I said, you better start learning how to love all kind of music. And that's the only way you're gonna do it. If you think you're gonna go in there and be a bebop star, uh-uh, it ain't gonna work unless you got a plan that I don't know about, and unless you got a pocket full of money.
Yeah, because again, it does take money to make money, and especially the way things have gone. Not that this was ever any different, but marketing and PR costs a dime. So if you're doing this in a DIY fashion, you need to have that money to do that stuff, and it's become so important to do that
No.
it's a necessity.
It has money to put a deposit on an apartment. I wouldn't even bother with that. I'd be hoping I had a friend there that way I could say, "Hey, can I be getting on your couch for a little while till I get an apartment?" You know what I'm saying? But yeah, yeah, but I think it's more or less, I think more or less it's a matter of economics, physics, is because networking, I don't think has gotten. Yeah, of course, it's a lot easier now too with the Facebook thing and networking thing, and I'm sure there's musicians in Austin, place to hook up on a computer, because if in every drum shop there would be, a bulletin board where you stick your name and your number on it and say, "Hey, I'm new in town. I'm from New Orleans. I'm John Vidacovich, and man, here's my number. Hit me up for gigs or lessons." Boom. Go in every music store in Austin, that would be on a bulletin board. Or go in every college and university and high school, that would be on a bulletin board. But nowadays the bulletin board is a lot more effectual because the bulletin board is basically in everybody's hand. Click it on, motherfucker. And know how to work that market, man. Know how to work that digital market, so you can, it seems to be that's how people are speaking the most. With the robot that's been assigned to them, speaking to that, and that's pretty much the new blackboard. It's right here in our hands.
Yeah, it's true.
That's the way
So
it seems. Yeah.
you've led your own bands, Astral project and things like that, and you've also been a sideman. Um, Again, as I mentioned previously, I saw you with John Cleary, but I know you've done some work. I'm not quite sure if it was purely on a recording basis or a live basis with like guys like John Scofield and Professor Longhair and stuff like that. What advice could you give to people? Let's kind of say they've gotten a gig as a sideman, right? They're playing with someone who's established and they get in all their gigs through this guy. What tips or advice could you share on once you have that gig, keeping that gig?
Well, two things. One is figuring out, not only by verbal communication, but by body language and things like that. What the leader of that who you're working for, who's signing your check, the guy who's doing that, the leader of the band, the one who's in artistic control, and figure out from him what he wants from you, what he expects from you. Learning to read the body language by the different things that you do that either make him comfortable, or if they seem to make him slightly uncomfortable or distract him from whatever it is that he expects you to do for him as a leader, if it's that kind of a situation. Then you have to be able to read his body language to see that what you're doing and playing is the right thing. Okay, then you have to make sure that you're between that detection, between learning how to detect how to fit in, or what the leader wants, what he expects of you to do, and what he expects of you not to do. That's very important. Learn to pick out what you're not expected to do, because you might do one or two things and then you got to be hip right away, figure out right away what you just did was not the right thing to do. Okay, then you just figure out how to really be in simpatico and in harmony with the band members, because there's going to be pluses and minuses in the rest of the band, and you might not agree with this guy. This guy might pull you a little bit more musically speaking and rhythmically speaking in one direction. One guy you might feel better with playing. One guy you might have to adjust this way. You have to learn all of that too, especially from a drummer standpoint of view. You have to learn what you play and don't play makes a player in the band feel uncomfortable, especially the key players like the bass player, and depending on the band.
Yeah. Yeah. So you're
You know,
basically
you
reading
just
different
got to, yeah, you
personalities.
have to read. My job as in a company as a drummer, man, is, man, if I see somebody uncomfortable, I got to adjust what I'm doing, because my job is to make this motherfucker shine, make him comfortable. My job is to polish him.
I like that as well, and the fact
That's
that as a drummer, I mean, again, you've been doing it a very long time, but that is traditionally the drummer's role. Hold it down, be the bones, drive the project along, keep everybody happy, kind of thing. New Orleans is such an interesting town in regards to there's so many different guys who will play on one gig. So you can go watch a band, and then tonight it's one lineup. And you go watch the same band tomorrow, and it's a complete different lineup. And you watch the same band on Sunday, and it's a complete different lineup. And it's interesting because, like, obviously the players are superb, but sometimes it's interesting to watch that body language, because the stuff you're talking about, I always feel is very important. But sometimes I'll see groups and it's almost like they don't even talk to each other. They just there to play. They don't know anything about each other. They don't pay attention to each other's mannerisms on stage. They're just
hmm
there and they leave. And they get the job done. I'm not trying to say they don't. They
hmm
totally do. But it's like that chemistry and trying to know how that chemistry works. That's a real skill.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And after a long, long, long time, after years and years and years and years of playing with some of the same people, and I just learned this too, and I'm still learning shit at 73 years old. God damn it! But anyway, I mean, from playing with people, and I say body language. I just said that word. But in addition, there's a parallel word that goes with that, and it's phrasing. And I've learned to, I can look at a guy and, man, just breathe with him and play with his solos, and really kick him around if he's the kind of player that wants to be kicked during the solo, or rather if he's the one kind of player that wants to be cradled during the solo. But I can read that body language, and now I've realized, especially last night, Joe, I realized that I can read a guy's body language and not be looking at him and have my eyes closed, and I can be reading his body language. I figured it out last night. I figured it out last night. Yeah. With two guys that I don't play with often. One guy I just played with about the fourth time I might have played with him, and another a bass player I played with about four times over the last 4 decades. Well, a little more. maybe, you know. But anyway, I know, and I found myself doing and breathing and with this tenor player, and I wasn't looking at him. I had my head down. I said, "Look at that shit! It's fucking crazy, man. I was crazy, man."
That's so cool, man. And I gotta give you props because I can hear the enthusiasm in your voice. And to know that you've been doing this for so long and you can still get that, you can hear the love that you have
Oh
for
man,
it. You know, it's just like that's
yeah.
so cool, man. It's
Mm.
so damn cool. I wish people could kind of put that in a bottle and just share it because it's, you know, even with all the hardships that come with being a self-employed musician, working musician, it still is a blessing. I mean, the fact that you can get that kind of feeling at 73, not I'm not meaning that in an insulting way, but like most people will get into their routine of a job and unfortunately work that job for a few years and be so just done with it. Groundhog Day, in and out, no excitement, no anything, you know. And again, I'm stereotyping, but like the fact that like this kind of job can still embrace those kind of emotions, that's a gift, man.
Hmm. Yeah, it is.
So, I mean, obviously, at this point, you've done so much. You've played with a bunch of people. You've got books out there. You've got DVDs out there. There's so much content with Johnny Vidacovich present in. Were there any things that you would have liked to have done career wise that maybe you didn't get the chance to do?
Well, I mean, I always say, you know, that man, every now and then I always, not on all, every now and then I would say, and this goes back to the '70s, the early '70s. I mean, I always say, man, if I would have moved to New York, moved to Boston when all my buddies did back in '72. I should have moved to Boston back in '73 when all my buddies moved there, but I didn't. I said, Johnny, come on up to Boston, man. And then they all moved from Boston to New York. I said, Johnny, come up to New York, man. Come on, move up here. And I would always say, look, man, I got a bunch of gigs down here. I kind of dig it down here. I'm having a good time. I'm making good money. I'm making decent money for 20 something year old guy, kid. Yeah. And I said, nah, I'm gonna stick around here I'll move up there later, And so I never did move up to New York or Boston. I just went up there and visited all the time, and I went up then before you knew it, I was up there playing gigs all the time, seeing my buddies sleeping on their sofas, and then I went up there, started going up there a lot. Then I even tried Compton when I was on the road with Scofield once. I sent my wife up to New York, gave her a bunch of money, but by that time we already had a 10-year-old kid and, my daughter. And I said, let's move to Manhattan. And, I gave her thousands of dollars. And I said, I'm on the road with Schofield. So I'm doing one night. Here's some money. You go look for an apartment. Well, she went through that money in no time. And that was only to look at apartments. It cost the money.
Hmm.
It was costing, $900 to get the key to look at the apartment.
Wow.
And it'd be an apartment, like 2 rooms and the bathrooms down the hall. Here's another key because 4 other apartments share the same bathroom, shit like that. And at that time, it's a lot different than moving up to New York if you're a single man, 23 years old, not 32, not 38, 39, 40 years old with a wife and a kid. That is not the right time to move to New York. So, yeah, if I didn't had moved to New York when I was young, it didn't make any sense to move there when you're older and you have kids. That's way too expensive. And when you're young, you can sleep on people's sofa and move around and get a cheap place with 4 other dudes. But I didn't do that, so I stayed in New Orleans. So that was one of the things that I always said I regret. But now I don't regret it. because New York is pretty hard, and I'm kind of lazy, and I like it here. I mean, I've made a comfortable place here in New Orleans. I'm not rich, don't have a big savings account, hardly anything. I don't have stocks and bonds. I don't have my house is not paid for, uh, but we got some groceries, and I got some gigs, and we're gonna maybe get the air conditioner and the heater, stuff working, and been saving a couple of bucks out of every gig to we're gonna survive, bro.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
all.
And
That's
again, I suppose you could look at it as, you know, life took you where it needed you to go at that time. And sure, you never went to New York, but any musician who comes to the city and just does a little bit of research or asks around, I'm telling you, you will hear about you at least within a couple days. I mean, I got to town 2 years ago, and I'm not lying to you. I hit the ground running very, very hard, very quick. Unfortunately, COVID hit, but I started hearing your name easily within a week. And I was like,
wonderful.
wow, I gotta check out this dude. I was like, I didn't at that time realize that there were all these other places outside of Frenchman and Bourbon, obviously, which there are.
Hmm.
But when I saw you, I was like, well, this makes sense, makes total sense. You're the guy,
Hmm.
So you did something right, man, and that is awesome. All right,
Cool.
Johnny, I've got a couple more things for you, and then I'm going to let you go.
Okay.
This one's a bit of a fully loaded question. I ask everybody. It's not the nicest question to answer. I'm totally aware of that. But what do you think the best piece of advice that you've ever been given towards your musical career has been?
The best piece of advice I've been given.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Or if you want to change it up a little bit, I mean, again, you've been doing this a long time. So, what do you think the best piece of advice you've learnt along the way has been? We could do it like that.
Listen more than talk. You know. Yeah, just listen more than talk, and yeah, and if something feels bad, go with your gut feeling. And the best piece of advice I've been given it that it's not really it's a music business, but for a lot of musicians, for the more percent, not the 1%, but for the more percent, the music business is really a music racket. And be careful. Be careful what you sign or don't sign when it comes to business. When it comes to the love of music, the best advice I've been given is play the song. Be totally empathetic to the musicians you're playing with at the moment, whether you like them, don't, whether you like them or dislike them or the music or anything. There's not anything to factor in. Be totally true to the moment that you're playing the song you're in. Play the song. Don't try to force what you want to play over the music. Play the music. Be empathetic to the music. Give yourself to the song. Let the song go through you and play the song. It's not about what you want to play and how good you want to look, but the best advice I've been given is play the song. Be true to the song. Sacrifice. Give yourself to the song. The moment, the people that you're in. The other shit is, yeah, the shit below that is music racket business. But the best advice I've been given is play the song, be true to the song with your heart.
Very nice. Okay, what is the best way for people to get hold of you if they want to sort of contact you for lessons or potentially contact you for a gig?
My wife, because she's so organized in her, they should they should get in touch with Deborah Vidacovich. And should I give you the email?
Yeah, sure. You can spit the email out here.
jvidacovich@cox.net.
Cool. And what I'll do is I'll put that on the show notes as well, so that when this eventually goes live, it'll be on the description and people can kind of find you from there. I'll also link your Facebook page and all the other relevant things.
Yeah. Deborah Vidacovich. Deborah is my wife's name. So, if you want to talk to her about something very specific, she's cool with that. She's good with the calendar.
Cool.
Yeah.
Okay. Johnny, thank you so much for your time, man. I'm sure the listeners are going to get a lot from this, and I know I sure did. I'm so grateful and value the wisdom and the time you gave me. Thank you so much, sir.
Love it. Peace out.
Peace out. Alrighty, there we go. Another episode done. And it also is occurring to me that I need some new catchphrases. I obviously say the same things each time. I'll work on that. I would like to publicly thank Johnny for his time. I know I say it quite often, but man, getting to talk to some of these dudes, it's like winning the lottery. Check out Johnny in the show notes. Check out the Musician's Mentor website at musicians-mentor.com. If you'd like a little bit more information about myself, you can head to travismark.com. But, keep pushing. Work hard. Push. That's what this takes. And remember to have some fun along the way. Peace.